I come out from under the soil in the earth, breaking through the rocks, growing wild and tall till the buds begin to pop. So pack me in a bowl or roll me in a spliff. While you're breaking me down, you can feel your fingers.
Hey, this is Ryan Heron, cannabis writer and advocate here in Portland, Oregon.
And what's up, everyone? It's Amanda Breeze here. I am a cannabis writer and aroma educator, and I am based out of Toronto.
We're continuing our cool jobs, cool careers in the industry today. We've got Tom Rothmeyer, founder of the Different Collective, and he's going to kind of tell us today about all of the cool stuff he's been up to in and outside the industry.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me, Ryan and Amanda. It's a pleasure to be on a Smoking Spot podcast with you guys today.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, pull up a seat to this big pink couch here we got, and let's chat.
One day we'll be able to fly the couch out to everyone who's on the podcast.
I have some wonderful images right now of a helicopter transporting a gigantic pink couch from party to party.
Maybe even do a podcast in Bavaria one day as well. Up in the Alps, smoke some weed, look at some cows, have a good time.
I would love that. Have you ever played Hey Cow?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So you hang out with a bunch of cows and someone yells, "Hey cow," and then you count at how many cows look. And then
that
the next
sounds like a stoner game, like immediately.
Let's do it. Let's go shout at some cows.
Totally.
The moment you've shouted at a cow, you've already won.
I'm in. So yeah, if you work in Canadian cannabis, then you have definitely heard of Tom, also known as Tom Different, on Instagram. And we're really stoked to have you this week to talk about some of the many and diverse projects that you're working on. For years, we've been colleagues through the internet, and you are always doing something interesting. Your passion for the plant shows through all of your projects. So what kind of stuff are you working on these days?
Well, so it's a full spectrum range of things that we've been working on lately.
Great choice of words there. I love that.
Yeah, so what we love with our company Urbanistic, we love to bring in the cannabis jargon into our business related jargon as well, which is also one of the reasons why we always say our pricing depends on set and settings. So we don't have fixed prices. It always depends on the client and what we're doing. But what we're doing right now, I can basically just bring you a little bit into my life as it is right now at this moment, because we are getting prepared for the Grow Up conference here in Victoria. And for the Grow Up conference, we will host our own event before the conference, which is called the Cannabis Cafe. This is our 6th Cannabis Cafe, actually. So I've just realized I've been running events for the last half year. And so part of our Cannabis Cafe and part of what we do at the Grow Up conference is we build up these Microscope bars. But we've also partnered with Storz and Bickle right now, the German vape producer that is making the Volcano, and they got the Mighty Plus here as well. And so we basically run these educational cannabis events that are targeted towards a responsible cannabis consumption environment. And for these events, we build up a microscope bar where we have 4 different microscopes with different products under the microscopes to talk about trichomes, scope different products, and every attendee of our event can scope their own products as well. And then what we do at these events as well, in order to push consumption lounges a little bit more here in BC, is we build up 2 volcanoes, and everyone can just come up to us, to our volcanoes, and get their volcano bag filled up and smoke a volcano bag outside, basically, because we're still trying to do everything that we can to be compliant while showing the government at the same time that the loopholes that we're in, it just makes both parties, our party and the government, seem kind of silly if we're having 50 stoners standing outside of a cafe smoking weed because no one can be inside at the end of the day.
Yeah. Also, it's just dignified consumption. The fact that that's even how people have to smoke when it's federally legal. That's a lot to unpack because these events sound amazing. So
They are amazing. They're my favorite day of the month, honestly.
So you're actually bringing your microscopes to the event and doing a whole educational session.
Exactly, and we actually bring so many microscopes that we fill up the entire cafe with microscopes. So there will be like our 4 display microscopes, but then there are like 2, 3, 4 like individual microscopes that we just spaced out through the cafe, where everyone can just like come together and like scope their own product. And because with the Different Collective, we're really trying to build like a responsible cannabis community right here, that we've seen parts of our community just grabbing random consumers by the hands and being like, I got some weed versus scope right over there, I'm gonna show you what trichomes are, and boom, there's like how we spread our education towards our local community here in Victoria on Vancouver Island, because Vancouver Island, as you guys might know, has a very deep-rooted legacy cannabis history as well.
Damn.
Man, I love that so much. I feel like there's like instant knowledge in just peering into a microscope. You know, like when I was in 4th or 5th grade and they finally got those out and they taught us all how to use them, and you start looking at like an onion skin, I think was like the first thing we all looked at. It's just, your mind is blown at something that you see on a daily basis and maybe you never even thought twice about. And then all of a sudden you're looking at individual trichomes, and now you're realizing like, oh, these crystals or whatever is like stuck to the bag when I'm done with this weed is actually like the most interesting thing about it. So I love that.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, as you said, Ryan, it's like one thing about the scope, it is just, it opens up this understanding. And I think that cannabis is also one of the most beautiful things you can look at under a scope as well. Like if you ever look at a cannabis bud, and every consumer says this, everyone who sees a weed for the first time under a scope says the same thing, which is that it looks like a little galaxy. And the galaxy will look differently from cultivar to cultivar. The chlorophyll behind the trichomes will always have a different color. The trichomes themselves will have different hues of colors, different robustness of where trichome has as well. And here and where you maybe find some mold and some bugs and like some stuff that shouldn't be in your weed either. So that is why it's so much fun to like scope your weed, because you never know what you're gonna expect at the end of the day.
It is so otherworldly to look at weed under a microscope. And it makes so much sense that you would use a microscopy class to basically show people and teach people to understand what a quality cannabis product can be. It makes it less vague. It's like grounding it into something you're actually seeing and experiencing. And as someone who educates people on aromatics and terpenes, I can see the connection of people understanding, oh, this is where all the action is happening, and actually being able to make that connection with their eyes.
Totally. And you gave me a perfect segue, because kind of like part of the education that we want to do and the stuff that we do with the microscopes and our grading system that we've built, which we can talk about in a second as well, is our intention of the Different Collective and Urbanistic is to bring together cannabis education, mindfulness education, and neuroscience education. Because what I learned in my last 4 years working in the cannabis industry, and also diving really deep into mindfulness practices and meditation as well, is that neuroscience combines all of it. And neuroscience is, from my perspective as well, where aromatherapy, like the work that you do, Amanda, like comes in as well. And right now, with the courses that we do, besides the microscope course, we have a cannabis grading course right now that we use to train retailers and LPs. So we've actually trained sweetgrass cannabis with our grading course, which to me, as the founder of this company, was like the biggest win already. Like, I already won. I don't need to train anyone else anymore. Because yeah, sweetgrass took our course, which was super amazing. And yeah, I just love to diving into like the nervous system and giving our students a better understanding how cannabis actually operates, because I feel like as a German coming to Canada, all you Canadians are just like, oh, it's just like weed. You just get high. Yeah, you might have the odd panic attack. You feel like you're dying, but it's just like getting high, right? It's all the same. And when you look into like neuroscience and you understand the nervous system, and you're like, this is probably one of the most complex plant on this entire planet, guys. And it's not just getting high, it's this literally changing your entire state of being and your entire consciousness with like two tiny poles of a joint at the end of the day. And that is mind-blowing to me. And I think just like getting stoned is not the right terminology to word how it is when your entire like vision, your entire movement, your entire thinking, like your entire perspective on life in general changes in the blink of seconds.
Yeah, I think the perspective change is like such an important thing to focus on. I haven't really thought too much about how like being stoned is sort of a pejorative. It's kind of like likely scaring away consumers or people who would be consumers just because they don't want that, sinking into the couch, lazy, heavy, non-motivated idea of what a stoner is, partly because we call it that. But if we talk about perspective shifts or mood elevating or something like that, I think it does make it a little bit more approachable to the novice smoker.
Totally. And then what I really figured that the neuroscience and like the mindfulness does as well is, so that's part of what we bring in our education. So if you think about what cannabis does primarily, is it changes the neurotransmission within your body. And neurotransmission is how all the neurons in your body basically communicate with each other. So basically this like communication between all the neurons is also like our consciousness to some degree, and while we're literally capable to do like anything at the end of the day, which for us in our education basically means that the first fundament that you have for a cannabis experience is your nervous system. And so if you can become really aware of your self-awareness, because for example, if you're having chronic pain, or if you're having anxiety, or if you're having like a lot of stress, it's basically your nervous system just being like dysregulated at this state. And so if you can become really aware what your nervous system is like, you know, okay, my nervous system's like this, cannabis will influence my nervous system in a particular way depending on the strain that I consume. So if you become more self-aware, you can make way better consumption decisions, which is one of the reasons why we created our cannabis grading system, because with this grading system, it allows you in the effect grading to assess your set and your setting. And your set and your setting will basically define where your nervous system is at. Because if you are feeling really good before you consume cannabis, and you are about to consume cannabis with your friends, maybe at your own place at home, your nervous system is safe. You know, this is my friend, I can trust him, I'm at home, I know where I am, feel really good, everything is up for safety. So the cannabis experience now can likely have a really like beneficial kind of like safe outcome. While if we think about the moments when we smoked weed with random people at a random place and we didn't know what the strain was mostly happened, for me at least, was that I got anxiety and I'm like, I don't know if I can trust these people. I don't know if I feel like I'm weird, and you just get so much in your head. So our grading system has really helped me and my business partner as well, just by using it ourselves, to figure out when consuming cannabis also makes sense for us and when it doesn't make sense for us, which is also one of the reasons why if I go to a conference like the Grow Up Conference next week, I'll be a speaker on stage. I will not consume any cannabis until I have my speaking done, because otherwise I just put so much pressure on my nervous system that I'm maybe standing on stage and I'm like, yeah, so what's the panel again? How do you talk English again? Yeah.
That is so true. Okay, I'm the same. At these conferences, I can't smoke like I do at home. Like that makes so much sense. And people will try to pass you the joint, and I always just say like, I'm more of a late night stoner. Like I like to get that baked in my apartment at night,
Same.
and then I just go to bed and I wake up feeling amazing. At a conference, For me, that's like work, and I'm in like work mode. So the last thing I want to do is be getting so fucking high that you can't function. But it's interesting because I've been tying some of what you're saying into the aromatherapy. You know, I have quite a lot of weed at home. So if people come over, they can help themselves to whatever is here. And so people will overconsume. And this happens quite a bit because when are you handed like a tote full of pounds and just help yourself? So people overconsume. So what I started doing is burning essential oils using specific terpenes to the weed that people were smoking that are also known for grounding, to try to balance out a more like community chill vibe in the full ass space, to try to abate some of those like things that people experience when they're smoking in a new space.
I like that too, because you've taken what is already a comfortable set and setting, Amanda's apartment, which we know, most are welcome. Come get a hug, come grab a handful of weed. So it's a comfortable, chill spot. And then you said, look, hey, if you care to overindulge, we got you. We're creating a little bit of a balancing act here. And if you are stressed out, then we'll set you in the corner and put some like nice music on. I think that's great. I am realizing now that I am the villain who has just constantly got my bag of jars around, and I show up to the function and I am immediately rolling joints because that's how I regulate my nervous system. So I'm like, okay, social anxiety, I don't want to talk to any of these people. What I'll do is I'll get a close group of friends and we will smoke my incredibly potent weed, and then everyone will just scatter to the winds and I'll be just fine. And then other people will be in the corner like, hey, when you're smoking with Ryan, you got to go easy, right? So I do like now, like at the family functions and some of the parties, there's definitely a lot of people who've caught on to the fact, okay, I'm going to go and hang out with Ryan and I'm going to limit myself to 4 hits or whatever. And that's the like way we can regulate here. But I am going to be paying a little more attention to my own set and setting before I'm like pushing it on everyone else. Maybe I could just, sneak out back and have a little joint to myself.
That's like such an important point that you touched on there as well, Ryan, because what we explain in our course is that according to the work of Dr. Rick Hansen, who's like a meditation coach and he's like a neuropsychologist as well, is the possible states of our nervous system are anywhere between the number 1 to the number 10th to the millionth power. So in 10th to the million power is a 1 followed by a million zeros. So that is why our brain is probably one of the most complex objects in the entire universe, because to put this in reference, the amount of atoms in the entire universe is estimated to be 10th to the 80th power, which just shows us how broad our nervous system is. And because the nervous system is what we think, how we move, how we see, like all these things, this has showed me why you can literally not copy and paste anyone's cannabis perspective to anyone else's, because everyone is so fundamentally different on a neurological level. And the number one thing the cannabis influences is this communication between the neurons, that if Ryan can like smoke like a gram in the morning and I can't, there's nothing to question, there's nothing to dive deeper. There's just for us to understand, this is my nervous system, it's maybe in this 10th to the millionth power somewhere here, and Ryan's is like somewhere completely else at the end of the day, just based on our cultures, our family upbringing, the traumas we had, the experience we have, the food that we ate, the information that we read, like so much variance.
Damn.
Yeah, so I'm very, very, very stoked about learning about the nervous system lately. It's like you started learning this and you're like, weed makes sense, mushroom makes sense, my life makes sense, meditation makes sense, yoga makes sense, my health makes sense, everything just makes sense all of a sudden.
So this like exploration that you're doing, it's changed how you consume cannabis, but has it changed other ways that you interact with the plant?
It has changed a lot, I would say, on like how I interact with the plant, because I've been meditating a lot. I just joined a yoga gym lately. I learned what the primary influences of the endocannabinoid system are and what the endocannabinoid system actually influences. And so besides cannabis, what influences the endocannabinoid system are a healthy diet, healthy relationships, herbal medicines, detox, aromatherapy, exercise, meditation, and yoga, cold dips, for example, as well. And so I've basically learned now through my dance with the plant and my mental health and my meditations that sometimes cannabis can be one of your options to influence your endocannabinoid system, but other times you can also just use like yoga, meditation, or a cold dip, or a tea, or like an essential oil as well. And so my understanding kind of like changed, that I see meditation, yoga, exercise, and even cold dips as medicine in themselves as well. And I feel like we as humans just like have a little bit of a problem, because from like how we were up broad is like basically medicine means you have a pill, you have a tincture, you have something that you ingest, and then you feel better. But now I understand that medicine can also be you actively doing something to change your nervous system. For example, if I am feeling tired and energyless and I want a little bit more focus, I don't always need to smoke weed. I could also just have a cold shower. This is going to rattle my nervous system up. This is going to make me focus and more attentive again. Or I could do some breathwork exercises where I do like really exaggerated and fast breathing, because this is also going to influence my sympathetic nervous system and gets me like more focused and dialed in. And you can do the same from stimulating to sedative, almost like the weed plants work as well, just by doing different mindfulness practices. And this is, at the end of the day, the main reason why with our company we're so focused on cannabis, but also mindfulness practices and this information about this nervous system. My big goal in life is to make people healthy, to empower people, to help others become successful. And I think cannabis is not the answer to all these questions, but it is a piece of the puzzle. But once you understand how to like balance your nervous system in a healthy and responsible way, this is your key to a success. Because if your nervous system is balanced, you're able to think better, perform better, be more calm in situations that would usually stress you out, and so on.
I like to approach weed from an herbalist perspective because it is a plant. We can use it in the way that we use many other plants. So I always find it interesting, if someone asks like, oh, what strain do you recommend as like an aphrodisiac, for example? I got recently that question, and I can list off 10 other herbs before I'd name weed. Now, weed could be part of that family, and it does have that action, but also so do a bunch of other plants. This week, I've been thinking about it a lot because I did a deep dive into dietary cannabinoids because of beta caryophyllene. So I was writing an article on how it's both a terpene and a cannabinoid. This is part of this magic of the plant. No one had ever realized that something could be both until recently through cannabis studies, even though we find beta caryophyllene in hops and black pepper, and most notoriously black pepper, for example. And in this article, they were saying that our endocannabinoid system can be activated because of beta caryophyllene when we eat beta caryophyllene rich foods. And so just by eating a lot of black pepper, or basil is another one, hops, just those are the first three that come to mind. That can also activate your ECS, not just smoking weed. And I did that deep dive this week. And so I love that. It is a holistic practice. And that's actually one of the things that I love about your approach.
Totally. And then on that note as well, it's also interesting because there's a research study out there as well that says that our diet is the fundamental substrate for endogenous cannabinoids to be built in our body. So endogenous cannabinoids are like synthesized in our bodies depending on the omega-3 to omega-6 fat ratios that we ingest in our diets. What was really interesting with this is just it basically just shows you that doing the healthy things will make you healthy based on the endocannabinoid system, which then also shows us why maybe the information about the endocannabinoid system was hidden for so long, because you have all the answers to your health right there. It's no pharmaceuticals, it's no like magic pills you gotta swallow. It's just like have healthy relationships, eat healthy, move your body, make time to rest your mind, and yeah, that's literally it. And drink the odd tea if you feel a little bit groggy. It's like lemon tea can also like stimulate you and get you up and like make you more active again at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And then that falls under, you know, the terpenes and the flavonoids and all of these components all working together in lots of plants.
Exactly. That is why with our course, what you say these days is we don't want to educate everyone about cannabis, because everyone is already educated about cannabis. What we want to do is we want to re-educate people about cannabis. So we want to explain them the things that they already know, but with a different perspective on it. And one perspective is what you say right now, Amanda, about the flavonoids and the esters and the thiols and all these other compounds, is please, guys, let's stop talking about terpenes when it comes to weed. If I hear again that this strain is fire because it has like this amount of limonene, and when I smell it and it doesn't smell like lemon but it smells like a fruit cake, like this does not make sense to me at all. So kind of like the education that we want to do right now with our grading system is fuck the terpenes, fuck the THC numbers, fuck all the numbers that are on these packaging labels. Just look at the weed, just smell the weed, experience the weed, and then just monitor your experience. And if it was a good experience, come back to the weed. If it was a bad experience, stay away from the weed. Trust me, I've done these self experiments. If one strain freaks you out, it will freak you out again and again and again and again.
You know, I think that's why we purposely left terpenes off our tasting wheel, because I think that people can kind of be misdirected by those and expect one specific response from a specific terpene, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. And by kind of picking out these smells or scents, we have like more complex bouquets that represent, like you said, the esters, the thiols, the flavonoids. Like it's a more complete picture of what you're getting in the cannabis, even if we're just using this, you know, sophisticated but simple sensory object, our nose, getting in there and communicating with the other person. Hey, I get cucumber melon from this. Oh, hey, me too. Now we have a great baseline of what this cannabis is going to offer us as well. I think that's great. And really just kind of going back to the magic pill idea, and cannabis has been a panacea for so long. And for us, and as we can dig deeper into it, we can see why, right? It's relieving for a lot of people. It's very potent. It has a lot going on for it. So if you're not thinking, oh, a cup of lemon tea might actually like increase my focus, and you just reach straight for the weed every time, like, yeah, it might give you that result, but it also might be overkill.
Yeah, and we gotta chat about this terpene wheel, by the way, because I don't know. I think remember, Amanda, you saw our grading system when we did the beta testing for it. We have like, I think right now we have like around like 90 different smells in there ish. And I would love to expand, because one of the reasons why we call ourselves the Different Collective as well is our grading system is just publicly available. So everyone can use it. You just go at urbanistic.ca and you tap the learn bar, and boom, you can just use our cannabis grading system. And so we're trying to get like feedback around our grading system from our entire community. And I would love to like just like have all of the aromas in there.
Yeah, so I think our wheel ended up having 127 smells.
Yeah, and there's more that I need to add every week. I'm like, for version 2, Amanda.
I felt really, really good about it until I went to Portland, and there's so many. The smells and flavors of the weed in Portland are so far fucking advanced from anything that I've seen globally, that it threw off the wheel a little bit for me, because I was like, God damn it, I didn't even know that was possible. Like, the stuff coming out of Portland kind of blew my mind. But overall, I think we covered a lot. I felt really good about our final list, but we spent over a year making it bigger, making it smaller again, making it bigger, and trying to really pin that down. I did get a chance to see your grading system. I loved it. It was so thorough. What is it exactly called?
It's called the TDC grading system,
What
but
is
I
the
usually like to put the word mindful in there here and there as well.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Because
fantastic.
Yeah, because what our grading system basically does, Ryan, to explain it to you, because Amanda already used it. So our grading system is built in a way where it standardizes your cannabis evaluations and it makes them completely objective. And it's like a mindful approach to cannabis grading, because all of us have like these like perceived like ideas, or we have like bias to certain products. For example, Royal Harvest product over here is my buddy Kevin, so I'm like, oh, it's Kevin's weed must be fire, so I might grade it really well. But with our grading system, there's no leeway for subjectivity, basically. I'll just make one example here. If I would grade this jar of weed right now, one thing that we would grade as part of our aroma grading is the intensity of the aroma, which means after opening up the jar, how much does the aroma travel towards your nostrils, basically, which then shows us the concentrations of aromatics in the product. And so to do this in a standardized way, what you would do is you would take the product and you keep it like a arm's length away from you on a table, and you like inhale gently for 5 seconds and you see, do you smell the weed? Very easy question. And then if it's like, yes, I smell the weed, you have a little graphic in there that shows a person with a jar arm's length away from them and the room being filled up with aroma. So you select this. But now if you would not smell the weed, you would take it now and you bring it to your chest. And then it would ask you the same question again. It's like, okay, now you have the weed at the chest. Do you smell it now? Yes or no? And then if you don't smell it here, you bring it under your throat. And then if you don't smell it here, you bring it on your chin. And then if you don't smell it here, you smell it right up here. And so this is going to like standardize how we just like think and perceive our cannabis, because it's like, if you grade the intensity of the aroma from a scale of 1 to 10, it's like so much variance right away. While here's like pretty straightforward. Do you smell it here? No, you don't smell it here. Well, if you smell it right here, then there's not much aroma, and boom. It's more targeted towards assessing your experience rather than putting scores on the product. So we do the scoring for you based on the data that you submit, basically.
I gotta say, the graphics were one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I love the graphics.
Especially one of the sections refers to the size of the buds. And I think you used, like, was it a little lighter graphic?
Yeah.
Like, comparables. Like, just the graphics just made so much sense, because we've seen so many different grading systems come out over the past 5 years. And genuinely, I thought yours was really fucking thorough and really fantastic. So if any of our listeners have not checked out the TDC grading system, it is a must, especially if you're trying to really have a better understanding of what cannabis is supposed to look like, or could look like, or should look like, comparables in bud sizes, comparables in aroma intensity. Like, these are all factors to consider, especially if you're wanting to be a connoisseur, which a lot of folks do. And I think what's cool about your story, Tom, is that you started as a bud tender, right?
Even lower. I started as a German who had no fucking idea about weed at all and came to Canada and learned about the Canadian cannabis culture, and I was like, what the fuck is going on over here?
Whoa, wait a second. So you just walked right into it like that? You had no idea?
I had no idea, but I knew that I wanted to work in this industry because I smoked weed in Germany. But it's like, just because you smoke weed doesn't mean you understand anything that's going on.
Hang on, I'm having a throwback. Did you send us a smoking spot about smoking weed on your mom's roof in Germany?
Yeah. I was in one of the episodes for
Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. Okay, yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so I'm for the listeners as well. So I'm one of the real Germans. I'm from Bavaria originally, which is quite interesting because I come from one of the biggest drinking cultures on like our entire planet. And the universe just led me magically into the biggest cannabis culture on our planet, which is BC at the end of the day, is where I'm living. And yeah, when I came to Canada, I had no idea about weed, like zero idea about weed. And what I did is I knew I came to Canada to go work and traveling, so I had to get a job to like travel further. But I also came here to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so when I realized that weed is legal here, I'm like, I'm gonna work in the legal weed industry. It sounds fucking sick, honestly. And so the first thing that I did, it was like 26-hour awake, is like went straight into a cannabis store and asked the person, so can German people work here or what? And he was like, buddy, I'm French, so yeah, Europeans can work here, no problem. And I'm like, okay, this is fucking sick. And I bought a joint and some cookies and I greened out right away. I questioned my entire like existence. I questioned why I went to Canada. I questioned why everyone's speaking English and how I'm going to survive here. But when everything was fine, and I started working in the one of the very first legal cannabis stores in Vancouver, which was City Cannabis. It was nuts. Being the first only legal store in Vancouver, it was so busy. It was insane. And so that made me realize that I really wanted to stay a part of this industry and to stay in this country and pursue my dreams in the cannabis industry. And yeah, at the very beginning, as I said, I didn't know anything about cannabis. So all I did is I bought the book, the little book of cannabis by Amanda Siebert. I studied that book thoroughly. I did the CanCell training online, and I just applied at every single cannabis dispensary I could find in Vancouver. And then City Cannabis basically hired me as a bartender, and from there I quickly worked my way up from normal bartender to supervisor to assistant manager of the store to later on becoming the entire like staff trainer of the company as well, and managing 2 stores actually through the entire pandemic as well. So it was a wild ride so far. And I know way more about weed now. Now it all makes sense. But at the very beginning, I'm like, I don't know shit about this.
Right. Well, you know, we've talked on the last couple of episodes about like kind of what mindset you need to enter the industry, since it's changing so fast and growing so fast. And I think you just nailed it. Is like, even if I'm the guy that's showing up and I have a very low baseline of knowledge, I'm going to get myself there. So in a very short amount of time, I'm teaching everyone else what I already know. And Amanda from last week started in a similar position, and then for health reasons had to kind of step back from bud tending and filled in that gap with social media and photography and doing events for the space. And I just think like it just goes to show you kind of have to make your own way a little bit, but there's plenty of opportunity if you're just searching for it.
Yeah, and that's great that you touch on this, Ryan, because I'll talk about this at my panel at the Grow Up conference. But what I really want to give people on their way, and this is the #1 skill that you have to have in this industry, otherwise you will never get anywhere, is you got to be proactive. You got to be seeking and seeking and seeking and seeking, because this industry changes so quickly and there's so much red tape that whatever opportunity comes, you got to go and you got to get this. It's the same with like once you want to like even expand yourself forward and become like more entrepreneurial as way, you got to keep learning, you got to take notes, you got to hustle harder than the other people around you, but at the same time you need to prioritize your health. And this is why I came into like the mindfulness stuff, and is why I meditate every day, which I found interesting, because I feel like sometimes people look at me and are like, oh, Thomas must really have his shit together. He like does his yoga and he like meditates and he's like building his own business. Is I do yoga and I meditate and I smoke a bunch of weed because I do not have my shit together. Because a lot of people think that like I have a lot of courage and I can be really fierce, but being a German in a different continent, navigating one of the most complicated industry on our planet right now, is stressful as fucking hell. And so if you want to achieve something in this industry, you need to primarily learn how to manage stress, because there's no way to accomplish something in this industry without being stressed the fuck out. That's what I think.
Snaps to that. Fuck that.
Yeah, everybody's eyes just got huge. We're all like, yes, that, exactly that.
We're nodding in agreement. Yeah, we're all freelancers, so it gets hectic. It gets really hectic for sure. And you have to be constantly pivoting. Constantly pivoting. And I think that's why it's been so fun to follow your work, because similarly, you know, you go in the direction that the wind's blowing and you got to follow the next lead. And sometimes it could go anywhere. You just never know.
Just getting goosebumps talking about all of this, because yeah, Francis and my, like the vision that we set out for our company Urbanistic is that we will revolutionize the global cannabis industry. That is the goal that we set out for our company, is to revolutionize the global cannabis industry. And if you think about this goal, there's no way we accomplish this goal without being stressed the fuck out. But this is why we learn so much about our nervous system, why we learn so much about our mind. Because if you can treat this stress with compassion and with a relaxed attitude, there's nothing that can stop you. Like, nothing can stop you. If you can just overcome adversities again and again and again, how should anything stop you? Because you're just going to overcome it. So whatever.
I love that. I bought some window markers this week, and I've been writing like inspirational quotes to literally de-stress myself in these hectic times. Plus harvest season's around the corner. It's a lot to digest this time of year. I'm going to add some of your quotables to my inspirational bathroom mirror this week.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I can give you one hint on the quotables as well, because you just mentioned it. Ryan's just kind of like stressed out, and you're kind of like stressed out with like doing all this work as well, which is like the main reason why I funded the Different Collective. When we all started this, we were like on Clubhouse chats and we were talking. And what I miss in our society these days is that no one's vulnerable really anymore. That's why I love to be like on podcasts and love to talk to my team as well, because I'll always be vulnerable and tell people how I'm feeling, because there's like clever emotional intelligence, and it's gonna empower all of us. One of the big pillars of self-compassion practices is realizing that there are millions of people on this planet that face the same problems as you do. And if we can keep this in mind, we will feel less isolated about our problem, which helps us deal with these problems in a better way. And so one thing that comes in for a lot of like entrepreneurial minds and like people that work in like such a like red taped industry like ourselves right now is a concept that is called tall poppy syndrome. Have you guys ever heard of tall poppy syndrome?
No.
So you've probably heard about imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
So tall poppy syndrome is one that nails it even better than imposter syndrome does. And when I realized this empowered me massively. So tall poppy syndrome refers to society trying to diminish us by not wanting people to overachieve the baseline of what society achieves. So if you think about a field of like poppies in like a botanical garden or whatever, what people do in these botanical gardens, the plants that grow too high, they cut off so everything's uniform, aligned, and has an even canopy. And this is basically society coming in, maybe even friends, maybe even family. Doesn't need to be general society, can even be the people close to you, and be like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if you should work in the cannabis industry. I don't know if you guys are really going to revolutionize the global cannabis industry. I don't think the government's going to change and anyone's going to evoke anything. So these are all the voices of society that are trying to like cut us down and keep us aligned with what society is right now. And so realizing that this is actually a psychological syndrome that is part of our lives these days has really empowered me to just realize, hey, No, I want to be the tall flower, because what happens with the tall poppies is we're the first ones that the raindrops hit. We're the first ones that's going to soak up the sunshine. So for the Different Collective, I chose as a symbol of mindfulness and health as the sunflower. If you think about a sunflower field, what do you notice about them? We're all tall as fuck, and we're all looking differently, and we're all like growing like as high as possible. And this is like the syndrome that I want to create. I want to create a community where like-minded people support each other and stop being jealous of each other, stop letting go of the ego, and just like uplift each other and support each other on every single level. No one should be sitting there looking at other people that are trying to accomplish the same goals as yourselves and be like, oh, they're better than me, I don't like this. It's like, no, this is your ego talking, buddy. Support these people, let them grow, show them that you support them, because this support will come back to you as well. And this has been another thing that helped me significantly on my path. I've just trying to support people front, left, right, and center. And sometimes it seems like, oh, nothing's really come out of it. But when 3 months later, one of the people that you supported remembers you, we're maybe in a business meeting with a really big company, and we're like, we should get Thomas on team because like he helped us in the past with this, and boom, it's spiraling up. So at the end of the day, don't listen to society, listen to your heart and support the homies around you, and you will succeed as well. And if you stick to your ego and you stick to all of your negativity, you will ultimately fail as well. This is just the way the energy goes, That's all that I can say.
It's very true. And we talked about this a little bit last week as well. Supporting the community and being a part of the cannabis community is going to get you so far, and not in a selfish, I'm doing this nice thing to get something out of it, but in this like beautifully collaborative way, because everyone's working on so many different projects. You know, for me, sometimes I get those random Instagram messages where someone's asking a really hard question. And you don't always want to answer them. It's going to take some time out of your day, but I love doing it. And it always comes back around when you just put that little bit of effort, even to a stranger on the internet. They could be the next person that answers the questions that you have. And so I love that collaborative aspect of the industry so much. And the challenges, egos get in the way. And we've been talking a lot about this with other podcasters, trying to do more collaborative efforts, because even as podcasters, there's a handful of other folks doing cannabis podcasts, and we should all be sharing each other's shows and being on each other's shows, because this is actually a community of people, and we're all going to get so much better and learn more by working together.
100%. Amen to that.
I really like what you said about being vulnerable, especially in Oregon now. We're kind of a mature industry that's still trying to find its footing a little bit. And that entrepreneurial mindset is often, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, come buy my product. But that's not what I connect with. You know, I connect with the old man on the hill that's like, hey, I'd love to come see you today, but my wife had to borrow my truck. Like, can we meet next week instead? Like, just like some honesty, some like, hey, we're just some real folks like trying to put this together and support our families is what I connect with the most. And that could be on any scale. I'm not saying like it has to be like the one plant you have in your backyard. Like, I'm okay with like these mass cultivators putting their personalities in the bag, in the jar for us, and letting us experience that. And I think without a little bit of vulnerability, you're never going to get like an honest connection with something.
Totally. And that is, you gave me another segue as well, Ryan, because that's really interesting with our grading system is it's only the vulnerable thought leading companies are actually able to see the value that we provide with one of the most critical cannabis grading systems that is out there. And so you can create a really objective opinion about certain products. And what I've seen is the craft growers that produce the best of the best, if sometimes you rank their weed a little bit lower, we're like super susceptible. We're like, oh, thank you. Oh, can you advise us what we could like do better now growing to like get the points up on like the scale? And like the bigger companies that have the bigger budget and just want to make money, we're the ones that are like, oh, I don't really know if this data is accurate. I don't really know if this should like be published. I think our weed is kind of like better, yada 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 yada. So it really like the grading system really helps you also to to map out in your industry as well who's a forward leading company who's going to drive this industry further and who's just in here to like grow plants and make money. What we realized is that even for entrepreneur as well, or even for a customer too, you can make the decision what side of the coin you want to support. You want to support the people that are forward leading, that are passionate about the plant and want to see the industry grow, or do you want to support the companies that are just in here because it's like another industry and you can make money selling weed at the end of the day?
And as well, the same goes for if you're judging cannabis. People don't like to hear too much honesty. And so the challenge when you're trying to stay employed in this industry is balancing an honest opinion with the expectation that you're going to say something nice because that company's hired you to provide a service. And I think that's why we've seen you on several judging panels over the past year, which is arguably one of the cooler jobs to do in the industry.
I honestly started hating it.
Yeah, tell us about that. Just digging into the whole like having to grade and judge other people's work and how that makes you feel.
Yeah, so here's the funny thing that happened smoking weed for the last 4 years and realizing so much about myself and like mindfulness and all of this. Like I don't want to be baked too often anymore these days. And so what actually happens with the judging as well, sometimes it's like you're playing Russian roulette. It's like, is there a bullet in there or is there no bullet in there? And I remembered that at the Unicorn Cup, I got like around 20 to 30 different samples and I had like a week. And so I'm a person who does everything 100%. So I'll like smoke 10 a day. Like I don't care if I like can only like lie around and not move anymore. I still get the week graded. But I remember I had like this one plant that smelled really incredible. It smelled like a lemon iced tea, and I was so excited to smoke it. And when I tried it and it tasted like shit, and I was like, well, this is kind of disappointing. It just tastes like shit. And then I got back inside and I'm like, well, I don't feel like my heart feels right now. And I was like really stressed out that day as well. So my nervous system was already in a really vulnerable spot. And then I got a straight up panic attack, which is like one of the worst adverse reactions that you can get with cannabis, is that you get a panic attack. For anyone who doesn't know, it feels like you're dying, but you're actually not dying. You're just like your entire like nervous system just gets overloaded. And so I remember I woke up the next day and I'm like, what the fuck happened yesterday? I feel like really weird. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I told myself for an hour straight that I would not die because I felt like I would have a heart attack, which is also the reason why a lot of people end in the hospitals without having any serious problems after smoking cannabis, because they're all experiencing panic attacks and they all think that something's wrong and that we're dying. And so that is where I just realized that I'm a little bit over the judging these days, because I'm just like, do I want to play Russian roulette again for a week? It's like, I'm not sure. And when we also drove to the Unicorn Music Festival and Francis was the driver and I still had to grade, so we would like make pit stops every like hour, and he's like driving and I'm just sitting next to him and just like
Well, I'm hearing about the TDC, and let's call it like the mindful grading system.
Yeah.
And it's hitting me perfectly because this week I went into a chain dispensary. It was like super convenient, and I kind of like know what to expect when I go in there. And the weed was laid out really only by price. And I'm smelling through all the tiers, and I actually ended up going for something that was far less cost-wise than things that they had on their top shelf. And it was really just because I could recognize the value of this weed. I think that they were like B buds or smalls or whatever you want to call them. So the buds were a little smaller, but the flavor, like the presentation, like everything about it, the aroma intensity was all exactly what I was looking for. And my whole thought was, there's so much on the shelf that cancels the other jars out because it smells the same, it looks the same, it costs the same, it has the exact same effect. There's no characteristics about it that are drawing me in or catching my attention. And the few things that did raise an eyebrow were at the opposite ends of the cost spectrum.
Yeah.
And so whoever was laying out their shelves, and this is, like I said, a chain, so I have a feeling they're probably doing 10 to 12 others, is doing a really poor job of representing the variety we could have, or the variety that a consumer might expect who's coming in there looking for one specific effect, and finding like 10 jars of basically the same weed. So I'm really hoping that more places can adopt these very objective systems that are mindful and that rely on some amount of knowledge, like the folks that we have that we could step in with. I mean, I feel like buying for a dispensary is something we'd all be really good at, but maybe putting these tools in somebody's hands who is not as educated as we are and still getting some good results out of it, because that's what you get when there is a system in place. I can guarantee you, just from looking at the shelves the other day, they had no system in place other than the pounds come in and they're this much, so that means they go on this shelf. And
Totally.
not how we should be grading our weed at all.
Totally, and that is like to end this with is a big picture that I'm basically seeing with our grading system and how we will revolutionize the global cannabis industry. Because with how our grading system is built, with like this mindful approach that you don't need to think, you just need to perceive. There's no prerequisite to using this grading system. You don't need to know about cannabis because the system will teach you what you need to know. You grade 10 products through this grading system. You know how cannabis works, how it operates, what it can look like, what are all the different things that you can grade. And when with this grading system, we can expand to the LPs, so you can use it for your pheno hunting. You can make unbiased decision about your internal products as well from all of your staff. And because it is this mindful approach, everyone's going to have fun doing it. It's going to be really straightforward for all of your staff to use the system. Then you can implement it in your stores as well, so you can check every product before it actually gets in the hands of the customers. Because here in Canada, with the supply chain, mold, especially char rods, can develop while the product is sitting on the shelf. So that is why the bartender should be using the grading system as well to then provide feedback to the LPs, which then allows you and the LPs to actually make your pricing based on the quality of the cannabis. Because if you are a LP and you have a certain batch and you usually sell it for $50 because it's always high quality, and when this one time you fuck something up and now you would sell the same product, different batch, still for $50, but it's less good of a product, well, your customer's going to be pissed at you because your customer expects the highest quality for you. So if you could pre-assess that the quality is not really worth this time, and you would just reduce for this one batch the price by, let's say, $5, your customer would be, wow, this is transparent, this is amazing, the price matches the quality of the weed. And the LPs can do the same. The LPs can also use the microscopes to then detect molds, detect insects, detect harmful things in the cannabis, to provide this information back to the LPs, maybe get the product cost reimbursed by the LPs as well. And then lastly, the consumer can use the grading system to understand the products better and make better like purchasing decisions on their side as well. So you have one system to empower all three pillars of the cannabis industry to make everything make more sense. And then the data that we capture, we can use to go back to the government and show the government that the supply chain doesn't make any sense because too much mold is showing up in the weed. The aromas are way better when the LPs graded versus when the customer grades it, and so on. Because the government and like politicians don't care about our opinions, they care about facts. And if we have enough data, then they can't argue with us anymore either. So this is basically the approach that we want to take to revolutionize the global cannabis industry. And I'm particularly excited right now as well because I talked to the owner of one of Germany's biggest cannabis pharmacies, so actual pharmacy that like sells normal pharmacy products as well, and they see the value in our grading system, and they want to provide us with feedback right now to get our grading system set up for all the pharmacies in Germany that are selling cannabis in a pharmacy setup. And that's going to be really exciting when we can get into the German market with this grading system as well.
Well, and from like a weed nerd I'm loving it, but from a health and safety point of view, it's so important. It's absolutely so important. And like you said, uninitiated buyers are bringing weed in with a higher moisture content than they're even recognizing. It sits on the shelf, it gets moldy. Now we have a dangerous product, and only because people aren't paying attention in the right kinds of ways. So just anything that's nudging people in this like more proper setup and situation than just bringing things in at whatever cost and putting it up on the shelf for question mark. I think it's just doing such a service to the consumer
and the industry. Hell yeah.
Yeah, the industry as a whole.
Yeah, if you guys want, we can also like make a little video chat one day, maybe even record it and do a little grading session together, so I can see what you guys think about everything we've built here.
Let's fucking do it and send you a copy of the aroma wheel, because we would love your opinion on it as well. So let's do this again soon for sure. But thank you. It is always so exciting to talk to you. You always have cool stuff going on.
Appreciate that. And yeah, listeners, urbanistic.ca, you can check out the grading system, have fun, send me feedback to tom@urbanistic.ca if you have some.
Hell yeah.
Beautiful, Tom. Yeah, glad we could have you on, and I love like digging into this. Well, tell us where to find you.
Yeah, so you guys, you can find me on Instagram as the Different Tom Different, and you can also find the Different Collective as the Different Collective on Instagram as well. And what we have coming up, which is maybe exciting for some of you in the future, is we want to do way more virtual calls and virtual education, where we not only educate you guys around like cannabis grading, microscopes and trichomes, but we'll also make education around graphic design, productivity, mindfulness practices, and basically everything you would need as someone who maybe wants to become a cannabis entrepreneur in the future.
Yeah, if you're just coming into the industry now, there's a lot of expensive lessons for you to learn if you're just trying to do it on your own. So connect with somebody like Tom, and you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah. And on that note, I went to clown school, so all the courses and stuff we do, it's never too serious. It's always going to be fun. Interesting fun fact, by the way, that I want to end with, were research studies that show that if you are in an environment of play, your synapses going to build quicker. So the more funny your information is presented, the easier it is for people to learn it. And apparently playfulness also spikes up the release of anandamide, the endogenous cannabinoid in your endocannabinoid system. So I'm just like, wow, just keep laughing, keep playing, and be silly, and don't give a shit about what other people think about you. Just do whatever the fuck you want.
Just a bunch of tall sunflowers here.
Yeah.
Great. Amanda, you want to tell everyone where they can find us?
Oh, this was just so enjoyable. I don't want it to end, but since is the time. I am on Instagram at emerald.temple.living, and you can find us at the.smokingspot.
Yeah, and I'm at the Loud 100. We're all easy enough to find. You just might have to type in every letter because we're all shadow banned from talking about this fun plant. We'll be back next week with more.
Boom.
Say no matter what kind of pain and anguish life may bring you. Oh, smoke it up, hold it down, and don't ever stop. Well, you can always find your smoking spot. Yeah, you can always find your smoking spot.
Hey, Smoking Spot fans. We're here to tell you about the newest launch from Centelligence Projects.
Over the last year, we've created the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. It's a sensory tool designed to help connoisseurs take their knowledge to the next level. So whether you're a bud tender, dispensary owner, cultivator, or you just love the smell of weed, you can better appreciate the cannabis in front of you.
Get your copy of the most detailed sensory tool built specifically for the cannabis industry, and order your Cannabis Aroma Wheel today at centelligenceproject.com.